Welcome back to another episode of Colony Drop. My name is Brian,
And my name is Isaac.
and this is a podcast about the long-running anime series Mobile Suit Gundam.
We talk about everything from the manga to the anime series to the models to the upcoming live action film and really anything even remotely related to Gundam.
That's right, we celebrate the entire meta genre.
Oh yeah, every series, every universe, all the time.
So Isaac, what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about a very special topic, our namesake, Brian. We're talking about colony drops. Bum, 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 bum.
So near and dear to our hearts.
What is a colony drop, Brian? Can you tell our listeners for the might not be in the know?
A colony drop is, at this point, probably a trope that, as far as I'm aware, was created by Gundam. It basically is a scenario where a faction, whether it's Zeon or maybe someone on the Federation side, gets so upset at the other side, they decide to take the most extreme action possible and use a colony as a weapon by directing it toward a target and, for lack of a better word, dropping it on that target, causing massive damage, massive casualties, climate problems, tectonic problems, just overall death and destruction as far as the eye can see.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Brian. A colony drop it's an act of war, an atrocity, and a weapon of mass destruction on a scale not seen in our century, in our timeline.
That is correct. One might say you have to travel to the universal century of Mobile Suit Gundam to see a colony drop.
Exactly. Or other centuries, or other timelines, I guess you could say, other universes. What makes colony drops so devastating is that these aren't just, your run-of-the-mill space stations that are kind of hovering in space that you see in other sci-fi genres. These are massive structures, miles, kilometers long, also in circumference. Who knows how much they weigh? They're big enough that they hold millions of people living long durations in space. When they fall with such impact and devastating force that it literally can change the environmental patterns of Earth. That's nuts.
It is pretty nuts, and that's why they're so effective. And what I really like about colony drops, or just the phrase colony drop, which is why we named ourselves Colony Drop, is it's a very Gundam thing. Like I can't think of really other sci-fi series that do this. Maybe it's done in some things, but definitely not with as much frequency as it happens in Mobile Suit Gundam. And so I feel like if you say the phrase colony drop, everybody knows, hey, you're talking about Gundam, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think there's other anime that they're kind of famous for dropping colonies or repeatedly dropping massive structures. There might be anime where there's big fleet battles or they, deploy super weapons to blow up planets and stuff. But colony drops repeatedly, no, that's definitely a Gundam thing.
Yeah, maybe one here or there, but not as a constant threat. Today we're planning on going through all of the colony drops that we're aware of and kind of just giving a summary of each one and how it affects the Gundam universe as a whole. So I think what we'll do is start with Universal Century, which is the main Gundam timeline, and then proceed to any other of the alternate universes that have some colony drops. What do you think, Isaac?
I like it. We'll start in UC, where it all started, and then from there, we'll just kick the can down the road as we look at, as our car drives down the freeway, looking at every massive pileup that is a colony drop. Okay, Brian, you're inside a colony. It's about to be dropped, or it's going to be dropped. Do you want to be gassed, or do you want to go down and enjoy the ride?
Oh man, that's terrible. I don't know. I definitely don't think I want to be gassed. I think if I was in a colony and I knew it was going to be dropped, I feel like I would try to escape somehow because it's pretty far. It doesn't happen within an hour or two.
Yeah, I mean, okay. We know if you get to Earth, you'll be cooked alive, right? Because these colonies turn red hot and white hot as they not the Dublin one, as they go through the Earth's atmosphere because they just generate so much heat. But now that you mentioned it, Brian, yeah, let's assume, all right, the colony's dropping and whatever bad guy faction's doing this, they'd already destroyed like all the shuttle bays and all that. You could conceivably put on a normal suit, right, and just hop out a hatch.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, given no other choice, I would prefer to take that action than go and attempt re-entry. If you stay on that colony, there's a lot of ways to die. One, someone's going to come gas you because apparently that's just what Gundam does to these colony inhabitants. Two, you may not make it through re-entry. And then three, you're definitely going to die on impact. So
Not if you're landing on Dublin, the city made of stone.
yeah, if you land in Dublin, your house may just get slightly reoriented.
If you land on Dublin, you should open a hatch and like walk out. And
Oh, hey. Yeah.
oh boy.
So,
Yeah.
Isaac, why don't you start us off and tell us what the very first colony drop was? And I should say that this is the colony drop that is the colony drop. When you say colony drop, this is the one that probably most people think of or most people refer to.
All right. The first colony drop was conducted by the bad guys of Gundam 0079. And they are, of course, the Principality of Zeon. They dropped a colony under Operation British, which was their plan to use a massive colony, have it drop onto Earth and destroy the Earth Federation's military headquarters, Jabrow, in South America. Unfortunately for Zeon, the Federation wasn't just going to stand around and let that happen. So in the course of a battle, the colony ended up falling not on South America, but on Sydney. And it completely destroyed Sydney and a sizable part of Australia. The colony drop killed billions of people and affected Earth's weather patterns for a while. I wasn't aware of the scale of the drop when I initially watched the series. I knew it destroyed a lot of Australia, but I wasn't aware that it killed billions just through the tsunamis and weather changes it caused around the world, the earthquakes, and I had no idea it caused lasting effects on the Earth's atmosphere. So,
yeah, I mean, colony drops kill in multiple ways, right? One, you're probably killing everyone inside the colony, which, like you said, is millions of people in worst case scenario.
A crime in and of itself.
Yes, I mean that should be enough right there. But then you've got the impact, which everyone in a huge radius is basically fried. And I think in the Operation British example, Sydney, I believe the resulting crater can be seen from space because it's 300 miles wide, roughly.
That's right. Oh yeah, if you remember in 0083, I think maybe the first episode or something, when Nina was on the Albion, she was admiring the ocean, and I think Captain Synapse says, we're actually over Australia, we're not really over the ocean. And she was like, oh wow.
Whoops. Turns out those colonies, they can make a big
splash. Zing.
And then, like you said, after the impact, you got more problems, right? You kick up dust, which causes climate change, blocks out the sun. What happens when the sun doesn't shine? Your crops die and famine results, so no one can eat. So then everyone dies from that. I mean, just talk about affecting life in every possible negative way you can. I mean, it's just a terrible move.
You know what? I'm going to chalk up the invention of colony drops, the father of colony drops. It was probably Gihren. I don't see anybody else in Zeon cooking up something so evil and like practical at the same time, right? This was quite the way to turn lemons into lemonade, I guess. You have these colonies where everyone inside is dead, or you just conquered that side. Might as well drop one, right? And you think nothing of the people anyways.
Yeah, I mean, that was their biggest and greatest weapon next to mole suits. So yeah, like you said, this Operation British was carried out on January 3rd of 0079. I think that's the first official day of the 1 year war. I think there were some skirmishes before that, but it's definitely part of like the 1 week battle that started the war. And the colony was named Island Ifish, and it was the Federation's capital colony inside too. So not only did they use a colony, but they used the Federation's capital colony. And what did they do before they dropped the colony, Isaac, to the people living in the colony?
They were gassed. They were gassed by, if you ever watched 083, Shima's fleet, they were responsible for gassing the colonies. Supposedly they weren't aware what they were doing, but I never completely bought that story. Maybe they weren't aware of what the specific military equipment they were moving into the colony was, but they clearly had a hand in it. I'm kind of conflicted by different accounts. There's in Origin, you see them moving really giant gas canisters into the colony and then really pumping it through the air circulation system. In the 08th MS team, Shiro's flashbacks show that Zaku's pretty much just marched in with these gas grenades and just took out the colony that way. So it's no matter, well, there's different recountings of exactly what happened, but at the end of the day, everybody got gassed.
Right. Yeah. You had to know you were doing something bad, I suppose.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. All you listeners in Australia, listen up. Depending on the time or the location in space where the Federation actually managed to divert the colony from landing on Jabral, do you think they had time to warn Australia, or at least even calculate that it was possibly going to land in Australia? Or do you think there was just no time by the time it had been diverted from South America, wherever it was going to land, there was just no realistic time to evacuate population centers?
Well, I think it's probably relative, right? I mean, it certainly is not going to happen in 10 minutes, but at the same time, it caused a 300-mile wide crater. So even if you get to the next town or 3 towns over or 5 towns over, I don't know that that was really going to help you if you were in the path. You basically would have needed to get to the opposite side of the country, or you needed to get off the continent in general. And there's no way that many people can evacuate a continent all at the same time, even given, I would say, weeks of preparation.
Yeah, now that you say it, that makes perfect sense. Even if they knew it was heading towards Australia, you would have to have all the logistical support of whatever Federation, naval fleets and air transportation units would really have to be almost globally redirected to evacuate a city of millions. Or
and it could take weeks to sail there,
right.
from wherever your boat is.
It's almost more of a mercy not to tell them that there's a colony about to drop.
they will notice at some point.
Let them have those final minutes in peace.
Yeah, so pretty much Sydney was gone. The continent of Australia was just heavily damaged, like you said. And then I do think that maybe this is actually, although it's the first drop, it does seem to be the one that caused the most damage. Would you agree with that?
You know what? I agree with that, and I'd go a step further. If it landed on Jabral, there's a possibility that the war would have been over.
I totally agree. Yeah.
It definitely, a lot of Federation units would have kept fighting, just from what we've seen about Federation characters. But they would have been more of a resistance, I think, if Federation leadership itself would have surrendered after the destruction of their headquarters.
Yeah, it certainly would have taken a very different turn, at a minimum, for sure.
But it did lead to the Antarctic Treaty.
It did, and that's true.
That precluded colony drops until the end of the war. And in Zeon's defense, and as a testament to their belief in following along with what they signed, they did not do another colony drop.
They did attempt one after Operation British, like 2 weeks later during the Battle of Loom. They were trying to steal a colony from Side 5. That colony was called Wadahote, I believe. And presumably they were going to target Jabra again, but that one the Federation completely foiled. Zeon used nukes, and basically all of Side 5 was destroyed, including the colony that they wanted to drop. And then right after that is actually when they signed the Antarctic Treaty, which, like you said, banned the use of nuclear, biological, chemical weapons, and colony drops.
That's interesting. So that means that there's a certain point where a colony's just been husked and blown out so much that you can't really propel it to Earth, I guess, or it would collapse on the way, or maybe really the only way to move a colony is it needs its original big old thrusters that got into position in the first place, and once those are gone, that's it. You can't really drop the colony.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's probably a few ways to do it, and all of them require significant effort. My understanding is that the one that they dropped in Operation British, they had to attach nuclear thrusters to it in order to move it. This is my own headcanon here, but maybe that's why that one did so much more damage. Maybe some of the reactors on those thrusters also blew up.
Good point.
While it on impact. I'm not sure. Particularly the colony in Operation British led to the signing of the Antarctic Treaty, because everybody saw what happened.
I don't say this that often, but in defense of the Federation, this was their first time dealing with any type of colony drop, let alone a drop of a huge object from space. So I think they did their best, and the best they could have done was divert it.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a win, right? I assume they would have preferred it didn't hit at all, but got to try something, right? You can't just let it come in at you
Exactly.
and do nothing. Isaac, do you know why they called it Operation British?
I think they explained in Origin, but I forgot. Drop some knowledge on me, Brian. Tell me why.
So apparently, I saw this on the wiki, but in the source book called Gundam Century, which was published in 1981.
Oh.
And apparently it was named that because decolonization led to the collapse of the British Empire. So if you're Gihren and you're trying to be cheeky, you want to get back at the Empire who's oppressing you. It's an appropriate name.
Oh, Gihren.
Yeah.
You're such a sassy guy.
And then one final note on Operation British before we move on is that there's a map at some point in Iron-Blooded Orphans that shows Australia. And Iron-Blooded Orphans does not take place in the Universal Century. It's a separate Gundam universe. But their map of Australia does have a large hole in it, presumably, homage to Operation British.
That just means the Calamity War would have been awesome to watch in a series because it was so devastating that parts of continents are missing.
If you would like to see Operation British, you can see that in the original Mobile Suit Gundam from 1979. They also recreate it in Gundam Unicorn and also in Gundam The Origin.
It's an important event. It's kind of like the first, nuclear explosion or, the first use of nuclear weapons in a war. It's the first colony drop in Gundam. Everybody knows about it. You might not know about the other ones, but it's pretty common to know about this one, I feel, as a fan.
I agree. So number 1, Operation British. Number 2, the attempted failure at the Battle of Loom.
Mm-hmm.
And number 3, probably from your favorite series. What is it?
Yeah. That would be Operation Stardust, led by our man, Aegil Delaz of the Delaz fleet. He hijacked a colony that was under construction, I believe, and then he pulled a fast one on the Federation, Brian. First, he made it look like it was going to the Luna, and then on Luna, his accomplices boot up their, I guess it was laser transmitted energy. They powered up the depleted energy reserves of the colony. The colony now had the energy to propel itself on its own, and it propelled towards Earth, where it ultimately impacted in North America. I always felt that this was maybe one of the mysteries of 0083. It always paused me for a bit, and I think it did maybe you too. The fact that they didn't target Jabra when it looked like very clearly that they could have gotten away with it. Even the Federation characters thought they were targeting Jabra to the last minute until I think Gato is in like the control room of the colony, and he says the target is in Jabra. It's North America.
That's right.
I was like, what?
Yes.
What are you doing?
Yes. I think there's several reasons for that. I agree. I think this was probably the most creative colony drop. Delaz arranges for 2 colonies to be stolen from, I believe, like you said, either construction or I think this might have been around the time that the Federation was moving the colonies around.
Oh,
and
yeah,
I think I think he took them out of their transport path and moved them so that they were projected to go to the moon. But like you said, he faked them out at the last minute, and he actually bounced the colonies off of each other.
I think I remember now. He blew off like the panels on both of them so that they would lose balance and collide.
Yep.
And then, that was that famous scene where Nina's like has these 2 glasses, these 2 empty glasses on the table. And she's like explaining to everybody with her little props, like how this is actually going to cause the colonies to become a colony drop.
Yep. They were Islands Ease and Blade from side 1. And I believe Ease was the one that ended up falling to Earth. I'm not actually sure. I couldn't really find what happened to Blade. Maybe it just kind of spiraled out of control and, is traveling through space.
Well, if they're equal weight if they're equal weight, they collide. I imagine, the other one was moved in just the opposite direction of Luna.
Yeah, it's okay. It's out there somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure they had to send a fleet to go figure out how to boot up its thrusters and get it back into position or something.
So Ease makes its way down, impacts the North American continent, and I believe the reasoning given in the show is that it's to disrupt the Federation's food supply because that's where a lot of the food is grown on Earth at this point. But like you said, everyone thought it was Jabra. But what is the reason it can't be Jabra, Isaac?
I'm stumped. I can only assume that. I don't know. Why couldn't it be Jabra?
Well, logically it should be Jabra, but I assume because we already know that there had been a series after this one chronologically, and Jabra was not blown up by a colony. Therefore, you can't contradict continuity. So
yeah. This almost becomes like the forgotten colony drop, though, because nobody ever references, the colony falling on North America. Well, actually, I guess as the UC goes on, at a certain point, they start referring to previous colony drops to an extent because so many of them have happened that it's. But I always thought it was such a weird decision in the story to say that it fell on North America to affect food production. That always was just so weird to me. So the Delaz fleet's plan was to make everybody in the Earth sphere hungry. Is that food production only for Earth? So the colonies wouldn't be affected, and it was just sort of payback and making food prices on Earth rise. It never really felt completely well thought out to me. It might have almost even been better if it originally was going to go to Jabrow, but I don't know. Just edit that scene so that Nina and Co kind of talk sense in Agato, and he decides to redirect it or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it may have made more sense had they just said, "Oh, the course has been, diverted so much so that we can't get it to Jabra, but the next biggest damage we can do is take out their food supply." That I could buy.
Yeah. For all we know, Gato was lying. I mean, maybe he wanted to save face since he knew he couldn't maneuver the colony where he wanted to, because that was probably, I think, the first time or maybe the only time we see a colony get cooked by a solar system. I doubt it would still have the capacity to maneuver as well as it could have compared to a colony that didn't get cooked. And man, what I really like about Operation Stardust, we see so many angles of that colony going down. We see it, the Federation side where they're trying to just sort of blast it after a while. We see them fail when they try to cook it with the solar system. We even see on Earth as it flies overhead, where Admiral Cohen's at. It's just so many different shots of the colony falling.
So many reminders of their failures.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, God. Nobody fails at stopping a colony drop like the Federation.
I had a few observations about this colony drop. One, I assume these colonies that they stole were not populated, particularly because I believe Delaz had Shima steal them. And if she was already upset about gassing, the colony from Operation British, I assume she would not do so here.
That's true. Actually, that's a good point, Brian. I assume one of the whole reasons he wanted to ally with her, despite her reputation, was that, who knows better than how to, I guess, infiltrate a colony than the unit that was the fleet responsible for sneaking in and gassing a colony. But yeah, I do specifically remember that these colonies were literally being transported by like one ship. So they had to have been emptied.
Yeah. Okay. I agree. I think that makes the most sense. I guess one thing to note here that's interesting is that the impact of this colony drop, or at least the aftermath, I suppose, is that Gato, Delaz, and Shima are all dead. They all die. And really, Delaz kind of gets what he wanted, right? I mean, Operation Stardust had multiple goals. One was, I think, to expose corruption in the Federation by presenting, look, they made a Gundam that violates the Antarctic Treaty. Which they were already asking for trouble doing that. Let's be honest here.
In the Federation's defense, the group that signed the Antarctic Treaty besides them was gone. It was the Republic of Zeon now. But anyways, right. I digress. Yeah.
And his other goal was to, inspire a new Zeon, which that sort of happened with Neo Zeon coming up in a few years. But I think what he really did was create the Titans.
Yeah, and you know what? The group of Federation officers that were clearly allowing Operation Stardust to progress, that was their whole plan, more or less. Operation Stardust more or less got as far as it did and was as successful or failed as it failed because of this group that would eventually be Titans. They were pretty much proto-Titans.
I was trying to find the meaning behind Operation Stardust, the name, and I couldn't find a real meaning. But really? I did notice that. Yeah, do you know why? Or do you know why it's called Operation Stardust?
Yeah, it's from a speech by Gihren at the Battle of Baoku. You remember he's in the carrier and he gives a speech on this cherry picker. He gets on this. He gets on
I think I do remember the cherry picker.
Yeah, he gets on this crane thing and decides to talk to all the pilots that happen to be in the room. Anyways, he says we will turn our enemies into stardust.
Oh,
so
okay. Got it.
Sorry for all our listeners. I memorized all of Gihren's space fascist speeches.
Got it. Okay, I was thinking.
I instantly put two and two together. When Delaz, who's Gihren's biggest, his the president of the Gihren fan club, he decided to name this Operation Stardust. I was like, oh, of course he did.
Yeah, well, he was a big fan of Gihren.
The second choice was Gihren is handsome. Operation Gihren is handsome.
Operation Gihren, why did you leave me?
Yes, come back.
Please, Gihren. You should add that to the wiki because that's not on there.
I mean, It might not be official, but in my headcanon, it's official because it's clearly something Gihren said. And I would imagine Delaz wasn't in the room. Obviously, he was on his ship, but he was probably listening in as the speech was broadcast, I assume, to all Xeon forces. So that's something he memorized since it was one of the last things Gihren probably said that he heard.
Well, plus, Delaz is a subscriber to Giren's brand of Xeon. I mean, he retreated from Abawaku once Gihren died. He did not stick around for the rest of the battle.
Yeah, you got me there. Yeah, why take orders from Kycilia?
Yeah. I mean, she didn't last much longer.
Yeah. I wonder how close Delaz was to like the zombies, because he instantly knew the moment that Gihren was reported as dead that Kycilia was responsible for his death.
That Kycilia.
So maybe Gihren gave him instructions or something, or at least a heads up, like if anything happens to me, there's only one person who's behind it, you know?
Yeah, maybe they were like, poker pals. Maybe they played poker on the weekends or something.
Probably. He could read Kycilia like a book. As much as I enjoy Xeon, I'm going to have to say that this was a half failure, a half success. Delaz kind of went down in history as being competent enough that he did pull off, a colony drop with really just a few ships and a few, small amount of mobile suits. But at the same time, it didn't bring back the Principality of Xeon and what I imagine Delaz would have wanted. It brought back Neo Xeon, or created Neo Xeon and the Titans and the Aeug. So not the result that Delaz would have wanted, but you know what? Delaz gets an A for effort. He did a great job in the whole operation overall, taking out the Naval Review and doing a colony drop. That's a lot for one man.
Oh yeah, I think he got it done for sure. It just the result is probably not exactly what he wanted. All right, so moving on. The next one I have on my list is when the Titans, the organization created as a result of Delaz's colony drop in UC-083, decide to launch their own colony drop on the lunar city of Von Braun in UC-087 during Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam. And they do this because Von Braun is sort of this city that aids and abets the Aeug. But unfortunately for the Titans, those meddling Aeug teenagers redirect the colony, and it lands somewhere else on the moon's surface, in a little uninhabited area, so it causes minimal damage. And I guess my only comment on this one, because it failed, it really didn't do much. Up until now, Xeon, they were the only people doing the colony dropping. So if you needed any more evidence that the Titans were evil, this is your evidence right here.
Exactly. I figured the officers in the Titans, having been on the other side of a colony drop for so long, maybe jumped at the chance to gain the military knowledge that they'd gained by attempting their own colony drop. At the same time, like, I'm not too familiar with the aerospace mechanics, the orbital mechanics of dropping large objects on the moon. But since the moon has lower gravity, would an impact be less severe if you're dropping something on it? Not even on Von Braun, but, like you said, they had to drop it on an unpopulated area of the moon. Would that thing just crack like an egg and cause even more problems for Earth? The destruction of Earth?
It would certainly probably be a little different, but maybe if it was, a more populated area, we would know more about what happens, at least in universe. Yeah, I mean, in the real world, I'm not sure how it would differ. It would still be a huge kinetic impact.
Yeah, the moon's so much smaller. I wonder if it was just terrifying being in the lunar cities, feeling that fall, because even if you didn't see it because you're on the other side of the moon, since it's such a smaller, surface area, it might have been a devastating earthquake.
It might have even actually been worse because the moon has no atmosphere to, a normal colony going through Earth's atmosphere. Some of it might burn off, like the mirrors probably detach, and then you're only left with the central cylinder. But I don't think anything would detach or burn off if it goes to the moon. So you might end up with actually more mass hitting the moon, which probably not good for the moon.
No, I would be concerned about the structural integrity of the lunar body.
Yeah. So one thing I could not find on this colony is what happened to the colony's inhabitants. Given, though, that it was the Titans, I'm going to guess that they gassed them.
We know exactly what happened to the colony's inhabitants.
And I couldn't actually find what colony was used either. I believe it's just sort of an unnamed colony from Side 4.
Oh, so in that case, there's possible, I guess, that it was under construction or something, but
could be. Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. The next colony drop I have on my list is probably the one that you think is the funniest.
It's the funniest and also the worst.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Okay. This colony drop is from, I believe it's from Double Zeta. What happened is Neo Zeon took a colony and they're going to drop it on Earth. At the time, I believe the capital for the Federation was in Dublin. And Neo Zeon decides to drop this colony on Dublin. But for whatever reason, I don't know if this was an animation choice or some other technological change that they made in the world of the story. This colony doesn't fall apart or anything. I don't even think it heats up, Brian. It just sort of slowly lands and stays in contact once it lands on Dublin. And it lands upright too, like a Coke can set down on like your table or your desk. It's just pointing straight up.
Isaac and I always compare colony drops to lawn darts, because when the colony lands, it lands at this angle and it kind of sticks up. But normally the colonies after that kind of either blow up or disintegrate or kind of fall apart. But like you said, this one kind of just plants itself in the ground and kind of just stands there. Dublin was destroyed. It was basically leveled as a result of the impact. It created a lot of tectonic problems like earthquakes and like some volcanic eruptions apparently. But I guess Double Zeta as a show is very odd. We can maybe go into that another day. And so appropriately, the colony drop in Double Zeta is weird as well.
It's just overall lore breaking. This is the colony drop that's maybe closest to like the Holdo maneuver in Star Wars. It doesn't make a lot of sense that a colony would be able to fall to Earth, not even heat up, not even start falling apart, and then land so slowly and stay intact once it lands on Earth. I almost wish they redid it or something, but it's the bad colony drop in all of Gundam. It's the worst one that kind of breaks the suspension of disbelief and the logic of the story, the logic of the science that we've come to believe in, the technology and the world that they built. It's the bad colony drop. I don't like it. It didn't make any sense. It gave off very little shockwaves when it did land. And I mean, people just continue fighting around it. They should have been vaporized by the impact. Not something I enjoy seeing because it makes me groan.
Like you said, Neo Zeon dropped this colony. They were led by Haman Khan. She dropped this colony in order to sort of demonstrate her power and try to intimidate the Earth Federation government into giving her I don't want to say a treaty, but I don't know, an agreement.
Favorable terms and an agreement.
Yes. Yeah. Didn't really work out. I mean, she kind of blew up Dublin, but all the Federation brass, they kind of just evacuated. They didn't bother to really help out any of the Dublin inhabitants, though.
And apparently they knew they didn't have to because that colony stayed intact.
I believe the reasoning given in the show was that they decided that, well, if people died, that would be less people that they needed to feed.
That's terrible. Again, but that does make perfect sense going off of 0083 and the fact that there's not that much food going around.
Yeah. So there you go. It's all in continuity, I think. Gato's assault on the Midwest cornfields ended up having a real impact.
Gato was a wiser guy than I thought. He was reading all the economic reports coming from the Federation. He was reading about the speeches from the Secretary of Agriculture.
Yeah. So I think if you take anything away from that colony drop on Dublin, is that one, the colony drop didn't make any sense based on the impact, and two, everyone involved in that colony drop was a real jerk. Haman killed everyone, and the leaders of the people that she killed didn't really care. So
pretty much, yeah. We're going to move on because that's a terrible colony drop.
All right.
What's the next one, Brian?
The next one on my list, it occurs on March 3rd of UC 0093. This is the opening battle in the movie Char's Counterattack, where Char and his Neo Zeon drop a mining asteroid called Fifth Luna onto Tibet. And basically, Amuro Ray and his anti-terrorist group, Londo Bell, so they fail to stop the colony drop. And I'd say it drops in the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Pretty much. It's like the opening, like things are bad.
Yeah.
This Neo Zeon group is very small, but they're very good at what they do.
Yes, they are very effective. So this happens in the first bit of the movie, and at this point, like you just said, we're so used to colony drops at this point, they just kind of just assume that they're dropping another colony. That's happening, and it happens in probably billions of people die because this is Tibet. That's a very populated area of the world. Again, it doesn't just affect Tibet. It affects Tibet and everything within hundreds of miles of Tibet. So, Asia's taken a huge hit here, and they're probably one of the most they are the most populated area on the planet. So
True.
I think we comfortably estimate the deaths in the billions. And so Shar did this drop so that he could pressure the Federation government into giving him a quick favorable agreement, similar to something, I guess, that Haman wanted. And as part of that agreement, he gets the Federation government to give him the old asteroid base Axis. And then what does he do with Axis, Isaac?
He decides to throw that thing at Earth.
Yep. So he drops an asteroid to get another one so that he can drop that one too. If
the Federation government is incompetent. This is the equivalent of being nuked and then selling your enemy like a nuclear weapon.
Yes, that's exactly right. You got nuked, and then the enemy, you said, please don't nuke me anymore. What would you like? And they asked for a nuke, and then you gave them a nuke, and then they nuked you again.
You gave him a bigger nuke than the one they just used on you.
That's true. They did give him back a bigger nuke because Axis was much bigger than Fifth Luna. Axis, if it hit huge. Earth, would have been an extinction. Everyone would have died. It would have blotted out the sun.
Brian, off the top of your head, is Axis bigger than... I think it's bigger than Solomon. Is it bigger than a Baoku?
Oh, I'm not sure. I'm sure you could look it up. I'm sure someone knows the size out there in some guidebook. But I mean, they don't really appear next to each other at any point in the series. So I'm not... No. Off the top of my head, I wouldn't be able to say. Baoku was pretty big as well.
Yeah.
I would say they're all comparable. If they're all bases, right? So I assume the bases are of similar size.
Well, it's a mining colony that got turned into a base, so I'm gonna...
No, that's true.
It might be smaller. But anyways, please continue.
Yeah. I will give Shar credit here. Both Fifth Luna and Axis are, former mining asteroid. So they're not colonies, and that makes sense, in universe, because Shar wouldn't go around and gas the inhabitants of the colony to get his way. Shar is firmly on the side of the space noids. But I do like that in universe, he did not drop a colony, even if it was uninhabited, because I would think he would view that as, okay, someone could live there. Our people are hurting, and if they had nowhere to go, they could live in this colony. So he did not waste a colony. But this drop, unfortunately for Shar, did fail. It failed for a few reasons. One, the Londo Bell team did get onto Axis before it hit, and they did detonate it, and they blew it in half. But one half was still headed towards the planet. And so Amuro Ray committed his life to trying to stop this. He tried to basically push it away on his own with the power of his psycho frame in the new Gundam. And a bunch of other mobile suits from both Londo Bell and Neo Zeon helped him push it away. What ended up really pushing it away was sort of the unexplained miracle of Gundam. Basically, a big glowing green light occurred, and the psycho power of the will of whether it's pilots or all the population of the planet Earth sort of willed Axis away from Earth.
It turned out there was a new type inside of all of us.
Yes. So that event is called the Axis shock. So while this was a failed colony drop, it was the biggest attempt.
Must have freaked everybody out in Neo Zeon and Londo Bell watching from the ships and stuff.
Yeah, it probably would have looked pretty strange.
Is this a Federation weapon?
Yeah, it must have looked like a Aurora Borealis or something.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Been pretty neat. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the Axis shock, Isaac? I know this probably wasn't your favorite moment in the series, but
no, I have very mixed feelings about Char's Neo Zeon. I almost wish he picked a different name because we have 2 Neo Zeons, technically 3 Neo Zeons if you're counting the sleeves, so it's just a big thing. It's a mess. I feel like there's multiple reasons for a lot of things that happened. Him choosing Axis was really distancing from, the Zabi-controlled Zeon or Zabi sympathizers like Haman Karn. So he literally wanted to just erase every trace of that. And going off what you said, Brian, yeah, for someone that's a son of Zeon Zemdaiken, it would be very disrespectful beneath him and almost sacrilegious, blasphemous in a way to use a colony and drop that on Earth. The colonies are supposed to be the future of humanity for Char's Neo Zeon. That was their whole ideology, that all of humanity had to move to space. The Earth itself had to be just canceled. so
let's be clear here. He was respectful to the space noids for not using a colony, but his goal was complete annihilation of the people living on Earth and their ability to live there. So very polite on one hand, but very unpolite on the other hand.
I'm sure there's a limit to how many of them could have become space noids, right? Because they'd have to evacuate using whatever ships are on Earth, whatever shuttles and mass drivers they can use on Earth, and then whatever spacecraft from the colonies that the colonies agreed to send would also have a limit. So I'm not sure you can evacuate countless billions of people from Earth after an asteroid or 2 asteroids have impacted it. Yeah, I think a lot of people would have been left to their fate if Neo Zeon succeeded.
Yep.
Good thing they were fighting Londo Bell, and Londo Bell only does one thing, and that's beat up Zeon and Neo Zeon and the sleeves and anybody else that gets in their way.
Londo Bell does, get stuff done. I'll give him that. And that pesky Amuro Ray, he's just thorn in Char's side for 14 years. Just won't go away.
They had the showdown, and it went the way you thought it would.
Amuro put Char in his place.
Char never got over Abawaku.
No. All right, Isaac. I think that covers all of the colony drop events in the Universal Century that I'm aware of. Are you aware of any others, or should we move on to another alternate universe?
I'm not aware of any more in the Universal Century, but let me ask you this, Brian. It seems like every time there's a colony drop in the Universal Century, we're told, oh my God, one more and the Earth can't take it, right? One more and that's the end of it. But it seems like I guess the Earth is very good at recovering because they're always doing more colony drops or dropping more things on Earth. I feel like, I could have sworn, like, when they're talking about Operation British early on in the Universal Century, they're saying things like, oh yeah, one more colony drop and that'll be it for Earth, or it'll be the destruction of Earth, or and then we get all the way to Char's counterattack where Axis is, if the Axis falls, this will really be it. It's almost like a Death Star kind of situation where, like, no matter what Star Wars series you're watching or whatever, the threat will always be some type of planet destroying weapon or some type of super weapon, and oh no, it's gonna attack us, and at the end they stop it, and but the enemy keeps building a new one, keep using a new one. So it feels like it's actually, I'll say this: the colony drop is the Death Star of Gundam.
I would agree with that. Yeah. It's the biggest, most well-known super weapon. I mean, maybe there are some other weapons you might argue are a little more effective, but certainly from a thematic standpoint, the colony drop stands above all, I think.
We'll talk about those weapons in our super weapon podcast episode. Might not necessarily happen next time, but we'll see. But anyways, moving along, Brian. What is the next series that features colony drops?
And we're going to cut it there for this episode. Tune in next week for our thoughts on the colony drops from all of Gundam's alternate timelines. Until then, please like, comment, subscribe, and keep those Minovsky reactors warm. See you.